Hello and welcome to Ag PhD. I'm Brian Hefty.
And I'm Darren Hefty. Thanks for joining us today. When we look at the soils, like right now we're in the low area of a field. On our farm, one of the problems that we can fight in this type of soil is a high magnesium soil. When you have high magnesium levels in your soil, it can be really tough to grow high yielding crops. We'll talk about dealing with those high magnesium soils.
The other thing when we talk about low grounds is we typically have issues with drainage. We're going to talk about doing some in-crop tiling on today's show.
We've also got a difficult to control weed of the week, and our farm basics is coming up next.
Farm Basics is brought to you by the Liberty Link trait and Liberty herbicide from Bayer. The most reliable weed management solution, Liberty Link and Liberty herbicide are the link to efficient row crop production and sustainable weed management.
During our Farm Basics time today, we're going to talk a little about wind erosion.
You know, there are a number of different ways that topsoil can leave fields. And a lot of times we think about, well, when it rains a lot, that can wash some of that topsoil away. And certainly, rain can definitely lead to problems with erosion. But one thing that is pretty constant in our neck of the woods is wind. There's always wind blowing, and when those big wind gusts come, it's not uncommon to see big clouds of dust leaving fields. So farmers are always addressing protecting their soils from wind erosion.
Wind erosion is a big concern for farmers. So first of all, before we get into what farmers do to prevent wind erosion, just understand that the most valuable soil in a farmer's field is in that top 1/10 of an inch. That's the most nutrient-rich part. It's got lots of organic matter usually. It's got lots of nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, all these valuable nutrients, the plant food basically, that your crop needs to grow. So as a farmer, we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to protect that.
So for farmers, a lot of the big changes have been in tillage. I think back to when my grandpa was farming. Now, obviously that's before my time. But the way that he farmed and the equipment that he had to do it, when it came to weed control, the guys in those days, they just had to do a lot of tillage. Like you think about the dirty 30s, and a lot of people that look back in history say, wow, we had a lot of wind erosion during that time, and we certainly did. But you look at the farming practices then compared to what farmers are doing now, the reduction in tillage has been dramatic.
Yeah, but I mean, back then they had no other choice. It was their only way to control weeds, to control insects, and to prepare a seed bed. Today, we've got such great equipment, we can go right into standing residue, even standing corn stalks, and we can seed the next crop and do a really good job with it. They couldn't do that back then. Plus, we have great herbicides, great insecticides, all these things, so we don't have to go out there and do all the tillage. We can have great pest control and get good yields without doing the tillage. And the whole point here is, without tillage, we don't have nearly the erosion. If a farmer leaves the residue in the field, leaves it standing from fall till the next spring, then that protects the field. It helps hold the soil in place. It also can trap more snow, so the field is just more protected.
The other thing is just the timing of that tillage too. If you do need to do some tillage out in a field, it's one thing to say, well, I pulled the crop out of the field October 1st. I'm not going to plant again until May 1st. Man, I want to get that field worked right now in October. Well, now you've left half the year basically, or more than half of the year, where that soil is unprotected from crop residue by doing that tillage immediately following harvest. So we see a lot of farmers waiting until the very tail end of fall, so then they get some snow out in the field, or just waiting until spring before they do that seed bed prep work. That way, there's only just a few days that soil is really exposed without any ground cover out there rather than months.
Another practice that has really caught on with farmers here in the last few years is the use of cover crops. So just like in Darren's example, if it's going to be 6 months or 7 months until the next crop is raised, what farmers are now doing in many cases is throwing a cover crop out there. So that cover crop might only grow for a few months, it might get killed off with the winter, whatever the case may be, but it's there to help protect the soil from erosion.
And farmers have no plans of harvesting that cover crop. They just want to get it out there to protect the soil, to make more nutrients available and so forth. So it isn't something where, yeah, you say it's only going to be out there for a few months. Most farmers don't care. They just want to see a good root system developed and some good ground cover above ground just to protect the soil. So cover crops are an important thing too.
Well, once again, when it comes to wind erosion, farmers are doing what they can to protect that valuable soil. There's always going to be some degree of wind erosion out there, but the amount that there is today has been dramatically reduced due to reduction in tillage, modern farming practices like the use of no-till equipment or strip-till equipment, and just the fact that we have great herbicides and insecticides today, so tillage isn't required nearly as often as it used to be.
Well, one other problem that we see with wind is it can blow weed seeds around the country. One of those weeds may just be our weed of the week. Can you identify this tough weed?
What's next in weed control technology? Roundup Ready 2 Extend soybeans will provide tolerance to dicamba and glyphosate and will be built on the Genuity Roundup Ready to Yield trait. See them in action at extendfollowafield.com.
I wish I could side dress more than just nitrogen.
You can. While side dressing is efficient for nitrogen applications, you can also use that opportunity to apply PK and the micronutrients your crop needs. AgroLiquid's Calibrate and MicroLink products allow you to nutritionally balance your side dress application efficiently and economically. Let Agriculture Liquid Fertilizer help you make your next crop a bumper crop. For more info, visit agroliquid.com.
Wake up, breakfast is served. Your roots crave pee. Most of your applied pee gets tied up in the soil, a natural phenomenon known as phosphorus fixation. Fix the problem with Avail Phosphorus Fertilizer Enhancer. Avail makes more pee available to your roots, here, here, and here. Increasing pee availability can lead to increased pee uptake in the plant. That's more pee, and more pee. More phosphorus for your crop can mean more results in your bin. An average of 9.6 bushels per acre of corn. Breakfast is served. Supercharge your pee with Avail.
You can put more bushels in your bin without expanding the farm with Yield Track. The new 24-row planter from Titan Machinery features the Case IH Early Riser planting system. Yield Track will take you to the field first with extra flotation come spring. The tracks eliminate pinched rows and reduce compaction. All 22 and 30-inch Yield Tracks come loaded with Case IH technology, including cable drive and AccuRow. Grab more bushels from every acre with Yield Track from Titan Machinery.
Looking to maximize yield? QuickRoots is a microbial seed inoculant that allows the plant root to explore a greater volume of soil, the key to higher yields. QuickRoots continues to generate yield response on corn, soybeans, wheat, and more. QuickRoots is applied to the seeds so the live microorganisms go right to work, enhancing seedling vigor, increasing the uptake of certain nutrients, including NPK, and expanding root volume. Maximize yield on your farm this season. Call TJ Technologies or your local dealer and get your QuickRoots today.
A proven herbicide for decades, dicamba can provide burn-down residual control of tough and resistant weeds for up to 14 days. That's another reason why farmers will use dicamba for years to come. Brought to you by Roundup Ready Plus Weed Management Solutions.
One of the biggest challenges on many farms across the United States is high magnesium. Now, magnesium is a nutrient that is important in crop growth. Crops need lots of magnesium, but the problem is when a field has too much magnesium in it, then it can absolutely hurt the drainage, it hurts the porosity in the soil, and ultimately it means lower yields.
You know, with everything when it comes to plant food, we need balance. We can't have way too much of one thing and not enough of another. And you may say, well, I've got lots of everything. Well, you can still have a problem if you have way too much of one particular nutrient. And magnesium can be a challenge, especially in the soil, as Brian kind of outlined here, because it's such a small particle.
Now, if you're testing your soil, what we're looking for here is not necessarily a certain parts per million. What we are looking for is a ratio of magnesium to many of the other nutrients in soil. So that's why we encourage you to get a base saturation test run on your field. And when you do that, we'd like to see that magnesium number in the range of 12% to 25%. Now, ideally, I'd like it to be in the 12 to 18% range, but even if you're up to 25%, it's probably not that bad. But we literally have some soils on our farm that have been 40% or 50% magnesium. And when that happens, we have tight soils, poorly drained, plus the fact that it ties up a lot of the potassium and some of the other nutrients, so we just can't get those into plants.
I was just going to go there with the potassium thing, and we talk to farmers all across the country that say, well, this particular ground will do very well raising this crop, but not so well raising this crop. And in our area, there's a lot of guys that are raising corn and soybeans. And what we'll commonly hear is, this is good corn ground, but I can't raise a decent soybean crop. And one of the big reasons is this potassium availability. With corn, it takes a little bit of potassium all the way through the growing season, just a little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit here. With soybeans, they want almost all of their potassium in a very short time period, right during the reproductive stages. So they're trying to pull it all in really fast. And in high magnesium soils, it's impossible for that crop to pull enough potassium in to get the really high yields.
So here's what we encourage you to do. If you have tremendously high magnesium in your field, we want you to haul lime out there. Now you might say, well, my pH is above 7. I don't want to haul lime out. Until you get that calcium percentage above 60 or 65%, you need lime. I don't care if your pH is high. It's not going to go up any higher than it is just because you have lime out there. Lime does not automatically raise pH, especially in a high pH soil. So we want you to haul lime out there, and then if you need to, you can haul some gypsum out there in addition to that. The reason why we want the gypsum out there is that extra sulfate in the gypsum can bind with the magnesium, and as long as you have drainage corrected in your field, so if you have tile out there and you get some normal rainfall, you can get that magnesium to combine with the sulfate to form what's called Epsom salts. And salts are leachable. So you get the Epsom salts to flush out of your soil. You raise the calcium by putting lime out there and gypsum out there. You lower the magnesium just because you put more calcium out there and because you're going to combine some of that magnesium with sulfate and leach it out of the field.
Now, when we're looking at this, again, this is a balance situation. So we're trying to remove something that's too high, also increase something that's too low at the same time. And it doesn't happen overnight. It's one of those situations where...
And this is one of the things,
okay,
Darren,
well,
that
hold on. I was just going to say, we hear people all the time say, I can't fix a high soil pH and I can't fix a high magnesium percent soil. And we disagree with both of those points.
Well, the high magnesium soil you can fix, I mean, literally in a couple of years. It's not that big a deal. If you just put enough lime out there and you put enough gypsum out there.
It is a big deal because when we look at this, it's going to take an investment. It's going to take a pretty decent size
Like on
investment.
our farm, it's $100 to $150 an acre. Okay, so ground around here is selling for $7,000 to $10,000 an acre. Do I mind putting $100 or $150 in there to get it so it to some degree fixes the soil, so I have better porosity, so I have better drainage, so I have better root growth? That's not a big investment in my book.
Well, again, it's one of those things that's different from what your grandpa did or your dad did on your ground, and probably something, if you've been farming 20 or 30 years, that you may never have done on this ground, because there's a lot of misinformation when it comes to soils. A lot of times we hear guys say, well, this is my tight, poorly drained soil. My pH is high, it's 7.5, 8, 8.5. I can't put lime out there. Well, if you can't put the lime out there, you can't fix the problem. You need to put the lime out there and not worry about what that pH is, because it's, again, like Brad had mentioned, it's not going to mess up that pH. But we need that calcium out there desperately to try and get this situation turned around. Sure, once we get that calcium percent in the base saturation up high enough, we can use something like gypsum and be very effective with that calcium in the sulfate portion. But again, it just takes a different mindset than what you've had before. And if you're scared to try it, do things like we do on our farm. We'll take a part of a field and just run a trial in that part of the field, compare it to where we don't. We noticed right away when we started putting lime into these high magnesium soils, the soil was looser. It was softer. I could take my tile spade and just shove it right in the ground, in this ground that normally was as hard as concrete in the middle of the summer. We were seeing big differences there. Then we started seeing slight differences on yield right off the bat. But like Brian said, it just takes a few years here. You can turn this thing around and make that soil be productive too.
So once again, if you do have high magnesium soils, there absolutely is a fix. We encourage you to get lime out there and get gypsum out there, and over time you're going to be able to take care of this problem. It just depends on how much you want to invest today or if you want to spread that investment out over a few years, but we encourage you to get after this thing because it absolutely is a problem in crop production.
Well, the best thing about improving your soils, besides raising bigger crops, is it also helps us fight off competition from weeds. Can you identify this week's Weed of the Week?
I will take action against herbicide-resistant weeds. I will know my weeds, and I will stop them before they go to seed. I will do whatever it takes to give my crops the upper hand, and I will use multiple herbicide sites of action because every action counts. I will take action, this time for all time.
Capello corn headers are designed for producers who expect more. Expect more grain in your bin. Expect an industry-leading 2-year manufacturer's warranty. Expect Capella-designed chopping and folding options that save you time and money. And whether red, green, or yellow, expect row size options that fit your operation because all producers deserve the best. Expect Capello. It's ahead above the rest.
A farmer's attention to detail is what makes the difference. You take the time for service management because you know how vital it is to your operation. You service your field like everything else because soil sampling makes all the difference and gets the results you want. Download the app Soil Test Pro and start grid sampling today. Keep your farm growing strong. The more you test, the more you know.
Get the most from the genetic potential in your crops, reduce plant stress, and increase yield. BioForge upregulates key genes to keep roots growing and reduce ethylene for improved plant stress tolerance. BioForge mixes well with other products for easy application with every pass through the field. BioForge, progressive growers' choice to improve root growth, reduce crop stress, and increase yield. Make every growing day count with BioForge from Stoller, USA.
If you watch Ag PhD TV, you'll love the new Ag PhD radio show each weekday on Rural Radio Sirius XM Channel 80. This is Darren Hefty. On the new Ag PhD radio program, we'll take live callers and provide the agronomic information and brotherly banter you've come to expect from Ag PhD. We'll feature a Back 40 segment where we talk to farmers and agronomists around the country to share what's going on with crop production. And it wouldn't be Ag PhD without addressing a pest of the day. Tune in to the Ag PhD radio show each weekday at 2 p.m. Central on Rural Radio Sirius XM Channel 80. If you're having a tough time getting into some ground this year, it could be an indication you need to get the tile plow running right now.
Yeah, this is one of the things that we've done on our farm over the last probably 7 years now, and it's just made such an enormous difference for us. It's a great thing for the environment. It's a great thing for your downstream neighbors. It's a great thing for your soil. It's a great thing for the world when we can raise more food. But just as importantly, it makes farming fun again because now you can go plant anytime you want. You can do tillage or spraying anytime you want, and you're not creating compaction out there. You're not getting stuck. It's just so much more enjoyable. The big reasons though why you want to do tiling right now on your farm. First of all, the sooner you get tile in, the sooner you're making money on that tile and the sooner you shape your ground up. So that's probably the number one reason. But think about June. We have lots of sunlight overall. So you have lots of hours to put this tile in. And then the other big thing is traction. People are always asking, well, do I have to pull the tile plow through with another tractor? And I just say, look, I don't care how big your tractor is. That's not the question. Horsepower is not the issue. It comes down to traction. If you have dry conditions, you probably aren't going to need a pull tractor even if you're going fairly deep. But if you have wetter conditions, even if you're only putting your tile in at 3 feet deep, you might have to pull quite a bit. So we love putting our tile in June. That's when we've done about 75% of the tiling on our farm, and we put in lots of tile. It's a great time, and what we found too, the biggest argument people will say is, well, I don't want to tile now because my crop's up. I'm going to rip the crop all up. No, you're not. You're only pulling a shank maybe once every 40 feet or every 70 feet. As long as you're doing it before the crop gets to be a foot tall, we've found no yield loss but gains when you're out there doing tiling at this time of year.
Well, the other question we get a lot, Brian, is, I've got so many things going on my farm. How much tile can I get put in the ground in a day?
Yeah, and on our farm we found 3 to 4 miles per day. We can get that done in June, but what we find after harvest, it might only be a mile a day or 2 miles a day just because it's colder, we have less traction, and certainly the day length is a lot shorter. So we really encourage you, take a look at right now on your farm to get tiling done. It's the best time of the year.
Well, before we leave this topic today, we want to leave you with some ammunition about tiling and what it really does, what impacts it really has in the environment.
Well, when you're talking to non-farmers, because let's face it, you're probably going to have some landlords, you're going to have some downstream neighbors, you might have to talk to county commissioners. If you don't have the right information, they're going to say, well, tiling's bad, isn't it? Okay, so here are the facts that you need to know. First of all, tiling reduces erosion. Look at university studies that have been done for 100 years, 40 to 60% erosion reduction when you put tile in the ground. Flooding reduction, 15 to 30% reduction in peak flow. Okay, that means reduction in flooding. And just think about why. In both of these cases, if you put tile in the ground, now you've got a lower water table. So now when rainfall lands, it can soak into the ground instead of running off. If you have an untiled field, what happens when rain comes? Well, the rain just runs right off the field, carries soil, chemical, and fertilizer with it. That stuff is not good to leave your field because it's valuable and it's bad for the downstream environment. The other big thing that I would tell you here is just think about soil as a whole. Its job, in part, is to filter water. And so if you've got a 3-foot buffer or a 4-foot buffer of soil above your tile line, by the time that water reaches the tile line and goes out the other end, it's pretty clean. Run some water quality studies on your farm. We have on our farm. Most of the time, it's drinking water quality.
Well, tiling's been done for hundreds of years, and it certainly has a positive impact on the environment and for your farm. We encourage you, look at this spring as an opportunity. It's a great time to get out and do some tiling in crop early in the season this year.
Another important thing to look at if you're out in your fields is our Weed of the Week. We'll tell you how to control it coming up next.
The Weed of the Week is sponsored by the Enlist Weed Control System from Dow AgroSciences, a new herbicide and trait system that will build on glyphosate.
Your farm tells a story, one that continues with the decisions you make. Introducing the Enlist Weed Control System, an advanced herbicide and trait system that will build on glyphosate for exceptional control of tough weeds. The next chapter begins.
Our Weed of the Week is Black Nightshade.
Well, it's not very often that we take an annual weed that Roundup can still control and we say this is one of the most problemsome weeds that we have in soybeans. But Black Nightshade has been just that for at least 20 or 30 years now across the upper Midwest. It's a terrible problem. You don't want Black Nightshade in your beans for a number of reasons. Really, the biggest issue I see is just being able to combine the field. When you've got mature Black Nightshade plants, the seeds are in a berry-like structure, and when you run a combine through a field and smash all those berries, not only do all the Black Nightshade seeds get coated around your soybean seed, but you can actually plug up your combine. And I've talked to farmers who have had to stop at the end of each half round in the field to pressure wash out their combine just because they were so gummed up with all these Black Nightshade berries.
So if you have Black Nightshade on your farm, we'll talk about how to control it in these different crops. Let's start in corn. I know soybeans, it's probably a little bit tougher, but I'm gonna take the easy one here first. I like Verdict Down, Balance Flex Down is just fine too. There are many products that have good activity, including Sure Start, Triple Flex, and a few others. And Post-Emerge, this really isn't that difficult a weed to control. Roundup does pretty well if it's small, if the Black Nightshade is small. Otherwise, you can always throw in some Callisto, Loudus, Impact, Armazon, and Status isn't too bad either.
Well, thanks for taking the easy crap, Brian. And then we turn to soybeans. This is where it gets to be a little bit more tricky. And post-emerge, what we've always liked has been Pursuit or Raptor.
Even at a half rate.
They're nice products, so that affects your pre-emerge choice. Now you may say, well, wait a second, I could use Sonic or I could use Authority Assist or something like that pre, but I really don't want to do that. I don't want to use the Authority First Sonic or Authority Assist pre. I'd like to save those products for post-emerge because typically our post-emerge choices are either going to include First Rate or Pursuit. In the case of Black Nightshade, I really want to make sure I save the Pursuit or Raptor for post. So I'd start off with something like Fierce or Authority MTZ. I like mixing that with a Prowl or Treflan type product, something from that chemical family.
And Sonaland's actually the best yellow on Black Nightshade as well.
That way we get a couple of different shots on Black Nightshade pre, so hopefully we don't see quite so much post. Then post-emerge, our best options again are Pursuit or Raptor, and I like mixing some Flex Star in with it in areas where that's labeled. That's got a little bit of kick on Black Nightshade, otherwise you could use some Cobra for some extra kick as well.
In wheat, not too much problem with this weed, but sharpen pre-emerge and post-emerge, I'd go with Husky. Well, once again, our Weed of the Week is Black Nightshade, and that's all the time we have for this week's weed, but stay tuned, Iron Talk is coming up next.
Iron Talk is brought to you by Case IH.
What are farmers doing to feed the planet? They're using Quadtrek technology, soil management, and planting systems from Case IH to foster a better growing environment that maximizes yield potential. Visit caseih.com to be ready.
the answer to an all-too-common tank contamination issue on today's Iron Talk. If you didn't rinse out your spray tank and you switched from corn to soybeans and dinged the beans with some contamination in the tank that you didn't even try to get out, it wouldn't be much of a surprise. But when you actually double or triple rinse the tank and use tank cleaner and the whole works, it simply makes you angry if it didn't work 100%. However, there's more to cleaning out a tank than just getting the gunk off the sides. One thing we're running into again this year, especially with the frequent showers that hit much of the upper Midwest through the month of May, is when a poly spray tank is left full overnight and potentially even for a few days. Sure, no one wants to get rained out and have to come back and finish spraying a field the next day or a couple days later. The problem is, if you have a herbicide sitting in the tank for an extended period of time, products like Roundup, for example, can actually have the time to act like a very good tank cleaner. You see, poly tanks actually have pore space within the poly. Your normal tank cleanout procedures may not be doing an adequate job pulling past chemicals you've used out of those pores. The solution is twofold. Number one, after your initial flush out is done, use tank cleaner. And when you use tank cleaner, fill the tank, charge the booms, and let it sit overnight in your sprayer. Second, try to never let a product sit in your sprayer overnight. You don't have to get direct injection, but that would be another solution as well. Just be cautious and realistic. If you have to leave a product in the tank overnight, you may have some issues. So from here on out, get serious about cleaning out your spray tank, even the pores. That's all for today's Iron Talk, and now, back to the show.
The math for getting higher yield potentials is simple. 4 is greater than 2. Steiger Rotrax Series tractors give you proven Case IH Quadtrac technology, helping you cover more acres in less time. And with 4 independent oscillating tracks, you'll also minimize ground pressure and compaction for a better growing environment, all of which adds up to higher potential yields. The world of farming is changing. Be ready with Case IH.
I will take action against herbicide-resistant weeds. I will know my weeds, and I will stop them before they go to seed. I will do whatever it takes to give my crops the upper hand, and I will use multiple herbicide sites of action because every action counts. I will take action, this time for all time.
Could I boost my potential by foliar feeding?
You can. Foliar feeding can correct nutrient deficiencies and sustain your crop through stress. It's a great way to deliver nutrients that your crop lacks to reach its full potential. Research proves it. Applied alone or in combination with your crop protection program, AgroLiquid products assure that when the season presents opportunity, you can boost your crop's yield potential by foliar feeding. For more info, visit agroliquid.com.
If you could see how nitrogen loss causes yield loss, you'd fix it. So fix it right, with the stabilizer proven to reduce all 3 ways nitrogen escapes. Nutrisphere N Nitrogen Fertilizer Manager. It keeps nitrogen in a more readily available form longer. With today's market and environment, it's a high priority to keep your nitrogen on track. To higher yield with Nutrisphere N.
Closed captioning for Ag PhD is sponsored by Norwood Sales.
The all-new S-Cube commercial tender is the only tender on the market with poly tanks, giving you the capability to haul seed, fertilizer, water, or liquid fertilizer. Each cube can hold 300 units of seed, 2,000 gallons of liquid, or 300 cubic feet of fertilizer. Options include full functioning wireless remote, stainless steel conveyors, and self-contained hydraulics. Get yours today at Norwood Sales.
That's all the time we have for today's show, but for more agronomic information, we invite you to listen to Ag PhD Radio each weekday at 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central, Sirius XM Channel 80. That's the rural radio channel. Each day, Darren and I talk about a pest of the day. We've got an agronomic topic we talk through, and we also take your live questions and your email questions. That's all on Ag PhD Radio each weekday on Sirius XM Channel 80.
And be sure to catch Ag PhD TV again next time for another Farm Basics Weed of the Week Iron Talk and a whole lot more. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Brian Hefty. Thanks for watching Ag PhD.
No one cares more for the environment than family farmers who plan to pass their land down to their children. These same farmers are working to double yields over the next 15 to 20 years to feed the growing world. To learn how they plan to do it, visit the Responsible Nutrient Management Foundation at rnmf.org.